empty shoes and a ton of taboos at best. Burn the contracts. We're out of time. You're a power battery, so don't get in line. No, starter, come on, start a riot. When they look, you must know it's fame, fake, or even hate. It's not the right paralysis, you stayed at the game. It's a lot to take in, it's designed to know it, don't wait. Don't be scared when the wave paralyzes, you stayed at the game. Don't get in line. No. You're a power battery. You were born free. Oh, so don't get in line.
A little girl was missing in Melissa's neighborhood. The entire town was looking for her. Everyone was in a panic and holding their children a little bit tighter. The missing girl's face was everywhere, on telephone poles, store windows, and the news. One day slowly turned into the next, with no sign of the missing girl. Tonight was the candlelight vigil in the neighborhood. Melissa grabbed her coat and made her way to the crowd. The dim light from the candles revealed faces with desperation and terror as the reality of the little girl being found alive faded into the darkness. Questions whispered through the crowd. Where is she? Did someone take her? What happened to her? I wonder what Melissa was thinking about that night. I wonder if the terror in the missing girl's face was flashing in her mind. You see, Melissa knew exactly where the little girl was. She knew what happened to her. Melissa is a monster. Sandra Cantu was born March 8, 2001, in Tracy, California. Tracy is a Northern California town about 60 miles inland from San Francisco. It's part of California's Central Valley. There are many produce farms in Tracy, along with its suburban neighborhoods and bustling downtown. Sandra was the youngest of 4. She had 3 older siblings, Miranda, Simone, and Thomas. Sandra had beautiful golden blonde hair with big brown eyes and a smile that pierced your soul. She was vibrant, full of energy, and a big presence in a tiny package, who loved Hannah Montana, Hello Kitty, and cooking with her mom. Looking at Sandra's photos brought on this bittersweet nostalgia. My daughter was born in 2001. I instantly flashed back to when my daughter was Sandra's age, her innocence, her hugs, her saying, "I love you, Mommy." I feel the sensation of guilt as I cover this story because my baby girl is still here. She was the youngest as well, my last to leave the house. She's grown now, graduated college, and pursuing her dreams. She'll be 23 this year. Sandra would have been turning 23 as well. Sandra should still be here. Sandra's case has long left the headlines. People have moved on, and many times these cases are forgotten, as unfortunately, new horrific crimes come to light. But Sandra, even though 15 years has gone by, here I am telling your story, sweet girl. There was a monster that took your light, your innocence, and sweet smile from this world. Your loss ripped a hole in your community and in the world. I know you're free now and soaring with the angels, beautiful. And I want to ensure your face and your story are known to every new generation. See, that monster still breathes the same air we do. And while they are here, I don't want them to ever forget what they did to you. Retelling your story ensures that, and also brings a warning. Not everyone is who they seem. The littlest victims are the most tragic, their stories the most haunting, and the loss is so immense. I feel it's important to take a minute in every video and honor them with love and respect. Let's take a minute to honor and remember little Sandra. Sweet Sandra, you were happy, you were smiling on that warm and sunny day. You were excited and skipping, just looking for a friend to play. No one ever thought or imagined that this would be your last day. Your light was so bright, sweet girl, it stirred up the night. The beast couldn't take it and tried to extinguish your light. The plan was a failure. Evil will never understand. It only made your light brighter, and it shone through the land. It exposed the beast, that horrid, evil monster, and showed the entire world that it was nothing but an imposter. Fly high, sweet girl, and know that we will never forget what that monster did to you, and justice you will get. Melissa Huckaby was born February 23, 1981, in Orange County, California. She had a relatively normal childhood growing up with her parents and two younger brothers. When Melissa was in high school, her parents adopted a little girl that Melissa doted over. She was very attentive to her adopted sister and acted almost as a second mother to her. In high school, Melissa seemed to thrive. She was getting good grades, she was on the dance team, and she had a lot of friends. Now, this is another part of the story that is haunting for me. Melissa went to the same high school I did. When I learned she grew up in Orange County, I thought, interesting, so did I wonder where. Then I read she attended Brea Olinda High School and about fell out of my chair. Now, she's about 10 years younger than me. I hate to admit that, but it's true. So I never knew her or heard of her, but that makes the story so much more real to me. Things for Melissa seemed to take a dark turn her senior year. Her grades started slipping, she was kicked off the dance team, and wasn't getting along with her parents. In a weird twist to this case, which seems like it could be its own rabbit hole, Melissa was reporting to her friends that she was SA'd by a Cyprus police officer. According to Melissa, he pulled her over, got her out of her car, handcuffed her, threw her in her car, and SA'd her. The accusations were reported to the police. They investigated the claims and said they were unfounded, and the officer was completely exonerated. My first thought, knowing what I know about Melissa, is that she was making this whole thing up. I mean, the officer was exonerated, but it was reported by her parents and several of her friends that after this alleged incident, Melissa began to unravel. It seems after high school and this alleged incident with the police officer, Melissa could never really get it together. Melissa eventually moved to Northern California and rented an apartment in Tracy, close to her grandparents. Her grandfather, Clifford Lawless, was the pastor of the Clover Road Baptist Church. She soon began dating a man named Josh Palmer. In 2002, she took out a protective order against him, claiming that he stalked her and threatened to hurt her grandfather. A year later, she married Johnny Huckaby, a man 2 years younger than herself. She had filed for bankruptcy protection just 8 days before the wedding. 4 months later, she gave birth more than a month before the due date to her only child, a daughter, Madison. In 2004, the couple legally separated, and in 2005, they divorced. Melissa tried to make it on her own after the divorce. She moved back down to Southern California and enrolled in Bryman College, a vocational school where she studied medical billing. Friends and family said Melissa barely survived financially. She struggled to hold down a job and raise her daughter. In 2006, Melissa was arrested and jailed for petty theft. Shortly afterward, she moved back to Tracy and moved in with her grandparents in the Orchard Estates mobile home park. She was hoping to get her life back together. She began teaching Sunday school at her grandparents' church and seemed to be adjusting well to her new life in Tracy. But Melissa's old demons started creeping back in, and she started stealing again, this time from the local Target store. She was arrested again and pleaded no contest to felony burglary, robbery, and misdemeanor petty theft. She was given probation and, as part of a plea deal, had to meet with a mental health professional assigned by the court who would report on Melissa's progress. Melissa's background paints a picture of instability, but not to the degree that anyone would have ever thought she'd be capable of committing one of the most horrific child crimes in California history. In every horrific crime, hindsight seems to be 20/20. We often look back to see if there were suspect behaviors that should have set off alarm bells of what was to come. It's not the case with every crime, but I believe in Melissa's case, this incident was a huge red flag. Laura Polk, a resident of the mobile home park where Melissa was residing with her grandparents, reported Melissa to the police, stating Melissa took her 7-year-old daughter without her permission. Melissa somehow coaxed Laura's daughter into her car, apparently offering to take her to the park without Laura's permission. When Melissa eventually brought Laura's daughter home, she was acting lethargic. Laura asked her daughter what happened while she was with Melissa and why they were gone so long. And all her daughter could remember is that Melissa took her to Wendy's, a fast food hamburger restaurant, and the water Melissa ordered her tasted funny. She couldn't recall much else. Laura took her daughter to the hospital, and it was determined that her 7-year-old daughter had substances in her system that should not be there. Laura immediately reported this incident to police, but the police did not believe Laura. She had a history with CPS and substances, so they chose not to investigate, stating there was no probable cause to arrest anyone.
I kept telling them to look into Melissa Huckaby a little bit more.
Laura says last January, Huckaby took her daughter to a local park without permission, and when she came home, her daughter could barely walk.
Did she tell you if Melissa gave her a...
No, she didn't know.
Did you ask her?
I asked her, but she said that the only thing that Melissa got for her was a water from Wendy's.
Laura now questions why authorities didn't take her claims against Huckaby more seriously.
I'm disappointed in them that they didn't look into Melissa a lot more than what they did.
There was no probable cause to arrest anyone.
So you mean to tell me that Laura's daughter was tested by the hospital and found to have things in her system that should not be there? A mother making a serious claim that someone took her without her permission and gave her something, and nothing was done because of a judgment call against the mother. What more probable cause do you need than a positive test from the hospital? Had they acted on this, they may have been able to find the water cup and test it. And had they looked more into Melissa, they would have found out this wasn't her first rodeo. She had been previously accused of doing the same thing, but to one of her boyfriends. The details of the story are a little sparse, but she apparently put something in his drink, put him in the driver's seat of his car in a McDonald's parking lot. She even put a hamburger in his lap and left him there. The police showed up and arrested him, and he was ultimately convicted of DUI. He caught charges because of her sinister act. It was proven he had something in his system. He told law enforcement what Melissa did to him, but she faced no consequences for this diabolical act either. Why on earth would she do that? This guy stated he loved her and was going to ask her to marry him. Instead, he caught charges. I'm glad he ended up being okay. Are you seeing a bit of a pattern here? Giving unsuspecting people who trusted her something to incapacitate them without their knowledge. It's like she was on some sort of power trip. The incident with Laura's daughter, though, is haunting and foreshadowing of what was to come. It was a trial run. Laura's daughter is lucky to be alive. If these incidents aren't red flags, I don't know what is. If law enforcement would have looked into the claims made by Melissa's boyfriend and Laura Polk, Sandra would most likely still be here. Friday, March 27th, 2009 was just like any other day for Sandra Cantu's family. It was a beautiful spring day. Maria and the kids got ready for the day, and the kids went off to school. That afternoon, a surveillance camera on the outside of Sandra's home shows her being dropped off from school. She enters her home, drops off her backpack, and then comes back out to greet her older brother, who is arriving home as well. It's heartwarming to see Sandra excitedly waiting for her brother. You can tell she adores him just from this short clip. Sandra goes in with him, changes her clothes, and comes back out with a pink Hello Kitty t-shirt, black pants, and Hannah Montana flip-flops. Presumably, she was going out to find some friends in the neighborhood to play with. The last sighting of her was on the same surveillance camera, showing her walking by. She turns for just a brief moment as if she was going back inside, but then decides to keep walking away from her home. Later that day, as the afternoon started turning into evening, Sandra's mother tells her brother Thomas to go and get Sandra and her sister Miranda for dinner. Both girls had been outside playing as they often did after school. Thomas found Miranda, but could not find Sandra. He searched over 20 minutes and couldn't find her anywhere. Maria and Sandra's other sister, Simone, are seen in this clip from their surveillance camera, getting into the car to go search for Sandra. Looking at this footage, I can feel Maria's panic through the screen. The only way I can relate as a mother is that feeling in your stomach when you turn around and don't see your child, that split second of terror, and then you find them around the corner and let out that huge sigh of relief. But for Maria, that huge sigh of relief didn't come. She searched everywhere and asked neighbors, but no one had seen Sandra for the last 2 hours. At 7:30 p.m., Maria called 911.
Tracy, please, do you have an emergency or can you please hold?
Well, I have a missing daughter.
Okay, how old is she?
She's 8.
Because of Sandra's age, the call was taken seriously, thank goodness. Law enforcement brought search dogs to try and pick up Sandra's scent. The dogs led officers outside of the trailer park to the main road, and then the trail went cold. No one was able to find Sandra that night. The reality of a mother's worst nightmare was setting in for Maria. I'm sure part of her was thinking she'll be found at any moment, that glimmer of hope any mother would hang on to with dear life. But then there's the dread and the horror, that sinking feeling, knowing something terrible has happened to her baby. Days turned into nights with no sign of Sandra. Her story was getting national coverage. Everyone was looking for her.
Couple real quick items. The reward money is now up to $26,000 for any information that leads to the whereabouts of Sandra. Our leads are up to over 800 at this particular point. We have search teams from 17 different agencies. Over 300 trained search people have come in to help us today. Additionally, I'm sure there are going to be hundreds of citizens that are coming in to help pass out flyers, do a door-to-door canvass, things like that.
The entire community was rallying together to find Sandra. Missing child flyers and posters were donated by Staples office supply store and were being placed all over Tracy and its surrounding areas. Parents in the area were especially affected. Not knowing if someone took Sandra was especially concerning, and every day that went by, hope that she would be found alive slowly faded. Day after day went by with search teams leaving no stone unturned, but still no Sandra. Sandra's mother was desperately trying to hold it together. She was appearing on the news, trying to get the word out about her missing daughter. Seeing her interviews are gut-wrenching.
This is going to be a dumb question, and you gotta ask it anyway. It's been more than a week since you've held your baby girl. How are you holding up?
Not very good. I miss my baby. I miss my little girl. I love her. She's a fun-living little girl. She's 8 in 2nd grade. She loves to color. She's very helpful. She always wants to make cookies. I mean, she's just tiny. She was weighed only 4 pounds when she was born. She's just a little baby.
What was the last thing she told you before she disappeared?
She loved me. And then she wanted to ask if she can go play outside. I told her, yeah.
And that was normal for her?
That was,
to
yeah.
Outside, right?
Yeah, every day.
When was it, how soon after she said, Mom, can I go play outside, did you say, well, where is she? Or what was the first thing that seemed unusual?
Well, she didn't come home for dinner, or she didn't call me.
And again, she was just going how far?
Oh, maybe 5 houses down.
That's it. So yeah, and she did that frequently.
Yes.
So she didn't come home for dinner?
No.
And she didn't call you?
No. That's
Is
when,
it-
oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, go
And that's when I got worried and I went out looking for her.
How long did you look for?
About an hour.
Are we going?
Too long. I mean, too long.
We always hope that there's going to be a happy ending. If she is watching, and if someone does have her, what would you say to her or them?
Just please let her go. I need my baby. Just let her drop her off at the store, restaurant, somewhere, so she can come home. I need her, I miss her, and I love her so much.
Sandra's father, Daniel Cantu, was investigated by law enforcement and was quickly cleared. He was nowhere near the area when she went missing. Sandra's other siblings had different fathers. Sandra was Daniel's only child with Maria. It's unclear if he had any other children, but it's very possible Sandra may have been his only child at the time. Daniel grew up in Tracy and had family there. But during the time that Sandra went missing, he was living in Mexico and often worked in San Diego. He wasn't involved in Sandra's life much. In fact, some news articles state he was Sandra's estranged father. Other articles say they talked on the phone all the time and had a great relationship. So there is conflicting information out there. From all of the research I did for this case, my conclusion is he may have been absent, but he loved his daughter and was devastated when she went missing. He traveled to Tracy to help in the search efforts to find Sandra.
All I know is I received a call from my sister stating that my daughter was missing Friday, and this was on a Saturday. I rushed out here. I stood for a day, and I needed to get back for my job.
And I think that the reason why it's important for us to do this interview is because if the attention is taken off of you, then the attention can be put on the real person, if there is a person that abducted Sandra, or the search, instead of these things that are kind of thwarting people.
It's like I told the detective, do everything you need to do your job to the best of your ability. So, do your job, do the best thing you can do. I thank you for all your prayers. I love you. If you can get to a phone, dial 911, babe. Call somebody, run, do anything you can do.
Law enforcement was digging deep into this case. It was all over the national news. Many commentators were speculating as to who could have been involved in Sandra's disappearance. There were rumors that an older man had been seen kissing Sandra on the lips at the pool. That man was looked at and found to have no involvement. When asked about the incident at the pool, Sandra's mother said she didn't know anything about it, so it may have been a rumor with no truth behind it. There were other men law enforcement investigated that lived in Sandra's trailer park that were said to have a shady past with children, if you know what I mean. But nothing solid came from investigating them either. 9 long and excruciating days came and went, but still no sign of Sandra. I can't imagine the weight her mother Maria was under. And trying to even begin to understand what Sandra's family was going through during this time, I try to picture in my mind going up or down the wooden steps leading to the front door of their trailer, knowing the last time Sandra went down those steps. They had it on their surveillance footage. They saw her go down those steps and never come back. Seeing Sandra's things in their home, her backpack, her toys, her clothes, and her smell. Going to take a shower and seeing her shampoo, maybe her hairbrush. I mean, at this point, she was only missing, so I'm sure all of her things were exactly where she left them. Constant reminders of her, but her family only being left with an eerie silence. No Sandra running in and out of the front door, asking her mom if she could play outside. No Hannah Montana playing in the background with Sandra's giggles echoing through the house. These last 9 days had to be horrific for Sandra's family. Little did they or the world know, some answers would be coming the next day. Sandra would be coming home.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? I'm Sergeant Tony Sheneman. I'm going to introduce Chief Janet Thiessen, Chief of the Tracy Police Department, who's going to read a prepared statement.
Good evening. My name is Janet Thiessen. I'm the Chief of the Tracy, California Police Department. Joining me is Supervisory Senior Resident Agent Todd Irinaga from the FBI Sacramento Division. On Friday, March 27th, 8-year-old Sandra Cantu was reported missing from her home in North Tracy. Today, during the course of farming operations at a local dairy farm located north of Tracy in the area of Whitehall Road off the Shetty Road, farm workers were transferring water from a collection pond to a field for irrigation. A suitcase came to the surface of the pond. The farm workers immediately notified the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office, who in turn called Tracy Police Department. Investigators from the Tracy Police Department, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office were on scene for several hours today, combing the area surrounding the pond for evidence prior to removing the bag from the water. At around 5:40 this evening, the bag was taken from the water and transported to the San Joaquin County morgue, where it was opened. Inside the bag, we located the body of Sandra Cantu. Sandra Cantu was positively identified at that point in time. Dr. Omalu of the coroner's office will be conducting an autopsy to determine the cause of death, and our heartfelt sympathies go out to Sandra's family, her friends, and her classmates. From this point forward, investigators will be looking at all of the evidence that was collected today and the evidence that and information that we have collected in the prior days regarding this investigation. We will be determining the person or persons responsible for this reprehensible act, and we will bring them to justice. This concludes my statement. Sergeant Tony Sheneman will address any questions that you have. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support in this investigation.
Sandra was found wearing the same pink Hello Kitty t-shirt, black pants, and Hannah Montana flip-flops she was wearing when she walked out of view in this footage. That would be the last time anyone would ever see her. Not only was Sandra's family having to navigate the heart-wrenching truth Sandra was gone forever, they also had to try and come to terms with the fact that someone did this to her. Someone brutally took Sandra from them. Sandra's mom tried her best to get in front of news cameras again. She wanted to talk about Sandra, thank law enforcement, and keep the story alive as law enforcement tried to find the monster responsible for taking Sandra. This news clip with Maria shows the raw emotion of a mother living her worst nightmare. Maria can't even speak. You can hear her pain. It's raw and hard to watch, but so important to see a glimpse of the impact this crime had on Sandra's family.
Maria, talk to me a little about your community. I know there's been an incredible outpouring of emotion and support from the people who live there in Tracy. What have you been hearing?
That's okay. The community has been just so generous and loving. We've had meals brought to us every day. There was a huge memorial out here, from what I understand, second to Princess Diana, which talks to the testament of this community and the support that they've been giving us.
And Maria, I'll say it for you, but I know you thought it was important this morning to please make sure that you thank the police for all their continued efforts and what they've been doing over the last several days to try to find not only Sandra when she was missing, but also now find the person who did this. And you know, Maria, my heart breaks for you, and I'm sorry that you're sitting there in that situation, but I know you wanted to share a little about your daughter, and we appreciate you. And Angie, thank you so much for being there as well. Our prayers are with you and your family.
The autopsy revealed Sandra was given a substance to incapacitate her. They found isopropyl alcohol in her liver, and she was brutally assayed. And as if that wasn't bad enough, a cloth or fabric of some kind was used to stop her breathing forever. The investigation revealed that Melissa Huckaby, a 28-year-old single mother, a Sunday school teacher, whose grandparents ran the local church, was the demon that did this to Sandra. According to the investigation, this is the series of events that took place on the day Sandra went missing. The surveillance cameras show Sandra walking in the direction of Melissa's house at 3:54 p.m. on Friday, March 27, 2009. 8 minutes later, the camera captures Melissa's SUV driving by. It's thought that Melissa somehow coaxed Sandra into her car and drove out of the trailer park with her. As she was driving with little Sandra in the car, Melissa called the trailer park manager and reported her Eddie Bauer suitcase had been stolen out of her driveway. Melissa was somehow able to give Sandra something to incapacitate her. Sound familiar? Going back to Laura Polk's daughter, which I think was the trial run, I'm going to speculate and say she probably gave Sandra a concoction she mixed up to drink. She took Sandra to the Clover Road Baptist Church, where she taught Sunday school, and her grandfather was the pastor. It was probably empty since it was a Friday afternoon. It was at this church that this monster did things to Sandra I can't even mention on this platform. But that is where Sandra met her demise at the hands of Melissa. The Eddie Bauer suitcase that Melissa claimed was stolen was not. No, it was in her car. She took it with her to the church because she had planned what she was going to do to precious Sandra. She brought the suitcase along because that is where she was going to put Sandra when she was done and dispose of her. According to the church surveillance footage, Melissa was in the church with Sandra for 85 minutes. She loads the suitcase back into her car and drives to the irrigation pond and dumps this baby girl in a manure-filled pond like a piece of trash. That is where she is met by a retired Marine and his wife who own the property where the irrigation pond is located. They saw Sandra's car pull over and became concerned, so they asked her if she was okay. They stated she acted hurried and distracted. She told them she stopped there because she had to pee and got out of there as soon as she could. The retired Marine later called this into police after Sandra was found on his property. He thought it was suspicious Melissa was out there on the day Sandra disappeared. I feel like Melissa being spotted by these two is some sort of divine intervention. I mean, it puts her right where Sandra was found. This is awesome. Thank you, God. Melissa thought she was being smart by reporting her suitcase stolen. She thought that ruse would cover her tracks in case Sandra was ever found. Then she could say whoever stole it must have had something to do with Sandra's disappearance. But that was a big mistake. As I came to find out, just about everything Melissa did that day and the days leading up to Sandra being found were like little breadcrumbs leading law enforcement right to her front door. The suitcase led back to Melissa, since she reported her stolen the day Sandra disappeared, and likewise, so did the note, since she conveniently found it. What is the note, you ask? The day after Sandra disappeared, the mobile home park hosted a candlelight vigil in support of her family. On her way to the vigil, Melissa supposedly found a note on the ground stating, "Cantu, located in stolen suitcase, thrown in water on Bichetti and Whitehall Road. Witness." It was written messy, almost as if a right-handed person tried to write with their left hand. Suitcase was misspelled, and so was the word on with an extra N added to the end. It was obvious someone was trying to cover up their handwriting. There were investigators attending the vigil. Sandra spotted them and ran up to them hysterically crying and handed them the note. This note proved to contain the exact cross streets of the location Sandra's body was found, Bichetti and Whitehall Road. There was also the fact Melissa was known to Sandra. Her daughter Madison and Sandra were friends who played together almost daily. Melissa was a Sunday school teacher at the church, which then led investigators to the church. They searched the church and found mountains of evidence that a crime had taken place in the Sunday school room. They also found church surveillance footage showing Melissa coming and going the Friday afternoon Sandra went missing. According to court records, there was no attempt to cover up the crime committed in the Sunday school room. There was a cut window blind cord used to tie the zipper pulls together on the suitcase, probably to make sure there was no escape in case Sandra was still alive. They also found an almost empty bottle of isopropyl alcohol. They found blood and other evidence. DNA testing proved to be Sandra's. Maybe Melissa planned to go back to the church and clean up, but the couple at the irrigation pond spooked her. Who knows, but investigators hit the evidence jackpot when they searched the church. The search of the church sent shockwaves through the community, and people were starting to wonder if the pastor was involved in Sandra's disappearance. Melissa, as many criminals do, decided to insert herself into the investigation again, just like she did with the note. She gave an interview to a local news station, defending her grandfather and explaining why, according to her, law enforcement might be searching the church.
Sort of pointing toward your dad or your grandfather, and you wanted to make something clear, right?
Right.
So, okay, so
I wanted to make clear that he was not at all somebody that would do anything. And the only reason that the police are over here and over at the church so much is because Sandra was my daughter's best friend and came over here almost every day and played with my daughter. And another thing is the suitcase. That was my suitcase. It was stolen out from in front of my house. And I called when I noticed it was stolen, called the police department, and they told me in order to make a report, it was over $200, they had to go online and make a report, and I did not have access to the internet, so I'm able to make a report at that time.
So do you believe your missing suitcase was the same suitcase that Sandra was found in?
I do not know. The suitcase that I've seen, from what I can see on TV, it does not look like my suitcase. The police have not disclosed any information as to whether or not it is my suitcase. I know they are in the process of getting pictures of suitcases, my specific suitcase, so that I can let them know whether or not this specific suitcase is mine. And that's the extent of the suitcase.
All right, and explain to me something. I heard Channel 11, but I want to hear from you. There was a situation where you and your daughter were out with another kid, and then what happened there? Someone accused you of something?
Oh, I had taken my daughter and one of her friends to the park, which I had done for the third time that week. The mother was, I guess, at work, and the grandmother had told the little girl that she could go to the park, which she does all the time. And when the mother came home, she didn't know where she was. I'd given the mother my phone number, my cell phone number, in case of anything were to happen. She needed to get a hold of me. She claims to have lost the phone number. Everything was fine. I brought her back. Police were called out at the time, and I was then called by my grandparents to her home because her mother did not know that she was missing. That she was with me.
At this point, Melissa was acting quite arrogant and loving the attention, but law enforcement was onto her, and it wouldn't be long before she was knocked off her pedestal. Investigators also searched Melissa's home she shared with her grandparents. It was there they found even more breadcrumbs, leading them to Melissa. They were able to find the notepad used to write the note Melissa, quote-unquote, found on the ground, with clues as to where Sandra's body was found. Investigators were able to identify it because the page underneath the page the note was written on had indentations on it from the pen pushing down on the paper. Those indentations were the exact words written on the note. They found substances that were later proved to be in Sandra's system. A journal that says "cute but psycho" on the cover, with writings about how angry Melissa was and how she was harming herself to deal with her anger. Cell phone records also revealed Melissa's callousness in regards to Sandra.
And among the other evidence we discovered today were text messages from people in the Huckaby household. And through those texts, you can see this case unfolding. On March 28th, the day after Sandra was reported missing, one message seems to blame the Cantu family, saying, quote, "We will certainly pray for her, but it's hard for me to give the parents much sympathy because I would never leave my child unattended." And by March 30th, this message is sent. "Mom, I know this sounds crazy, but is Mel a suspect? I know she wouldn't hurt anyone, just herself, but they don't think she knows where Sandra is, do they?"
Hey guys, just popping in here real quick to let you guys know there are details to this case that are so horrific I can't talk about them on YouTube. Unfortunately, true crime is heavily censored here, so I can't go into too much detail about what Melissa did to Sandra and how truly brutal it was. I tried uploading this video 3 times, and each time YouTube was like, "Nope, don't like this." So I would go back and take things out and try again and would still be told I'm not following the guidelines. I had to go back and redo the entire video and make it as vanilla as possible to get it approved. I've uploaded an uncensored version with more details on my Patreon. The link to that is in the description of this video. If you would like to join and get access to my videos uncensored, it not only gives you exclusive content, but helps support the channel. Okay, moving on. Evidence leading back to Melissa was piling up. Law enforcement wanted to interview Melissa, but when they tried to contact her to come down and speak with them, they found she was in the hospital being treated for internal bleeding. She had swallowed a razor blade. She knew law enforcement was onto her. This was a ridiculous attempt to garner sympathy and stall the inevitable. Little did Melissa know, an investigator was stationed outside Melissa's hospital room door, listening to see if she'd say anything about the case. It just so happened that Sandra was found while Melissa was in the hospital. It was all over the news, and Melissa was watching from her bed. Her reaction was calm. All she said is, "That looks like my stolen suitcase." Once Melissa was released from the hospital, law enforcement was able to interview her. She was arrogant at first and almost seemed to enjoy the attention. She thought she was helping detectives find who did this to Sandra. She wanted to be the hero. They let Melissa go after the first interview, then called her back in for a second time. That second interview lasted upwards of 7 hours. It was during the second interview, Melissa realized she was no longer the hero, the helper, but she was actually the suspect. As detectives unveiled some of the undeniable evidence against her, the arrogance disappeared.
Do you find it ironic that you found that note? Nobody else found it?
Yeah, I do. To be honest, I do feel it.
And do you find it ironic that it talked about a stolen suitcase and your suitcase was stolen?
Yes.
Melissa never left that second interview. Well, she did, but in handcuffs. She was arrested that evening and taken to jail. This was 3 days after Sandra was found, April 9th, 2009.
Melissa Huckaby's car still sits right here in front of the Tracy Police Department, but she left here about 2:30 in the morning in handcuffs. That's the 28-year-old Sunday school teacher sitting in the back of the unmarked police car on her way to jail.
Over the course of the investigation, agents and investigators from numerous agencies have been instrumental in identifying Melissa Huckaby as being responsible for Sandra's death.
Last night, we obtained exclusive video of Huckaby leaving the mobile home park and driving away. She signaled that she had to leave. She later sent a text message telling me she was on the way to meet with police detectives, a meeting that lasted about 7 hours. She apparently said enough to implicate herself in the crime.
Law enforcement presented their evidence to a grand jury, and Melissa was indicted in the case. I can't imagine the horror when Sandra's family found out their neighbor, the mother of Sandra's friend, the local Sunday school teacher, whose grandfather was the pastor of the church, was the monster that did this to Sandra. They would have never in a million years suspected that she was capable of something like this. How could they have known? That is what makes this case so haunting. At her arraignment, Melissa looked cowardly and pathetic, a stark difference to the arrogance she displayed in the news interviews and in her interrogations with police. The judge read each charge out to the courtroom, one by one, and the world was watching in utter disbelief. A woman and a mother could be capable of doing this to an innocent 8-year-old girl. Melissa looked distraught and pathetic, cowardly, but the charge of SA really humiliated Melissa, as it should. Charges for what Melissa did to Laura Polk's daughter and her boyfriend were also added to the long list of charges Melissa faced, and the DA was going for the death penalty. Her defense attorney did not enter a plea at the arraignment. Melissa tried a few stunts in jail while she was awaiting trial. She was behaving in a way that she thought would make herself look crazy, probably thinking she could try for an insanity defense. It was pointless. That would have never happened. Melissa tried to cover her crimes, knowing what she did was wrong. She also tried the razor blade stunt, which the DA later said was consciousness of guilt. So her jail antics were a complete waste of time. Melissa was offered a plea deal, of course. The DA would take the death penalty charge off the table if Melissa would admit guilt and save Sandra's family from having the horrific details of what she did to Sandra played out in court. With the mountains of evidence stacked against her, Melissa agreed. Now, I generally hate plea deals. In so many cases, we find the worst of the worst perpetrators of crimes against children having their sentences reduced because of plea deals. I will never understand this. It's infuriating. But in this case, I agree with it for the sake of sparing Sandra's family. The judge ultimately sentenced Melissa to life in prison without the possibility of parole, so she will never get out. She will rot there for the rest of her life. At her sentencing, Melissa gave a half-witted apology to Sandra's family. In her apology, she denies brutally essaying Sandra. This infuriated me because I thought that was part of her plea deal. Why was she allowed to get away with not admitting guilt to everything she did to that precious baby girl? The evidence was undeniable. She also had the unmitigated gall to say Sandra didn't suffer. This was not an apology. It was a blatant attempt to inflict more pain on Sandra's family.
Words cannot convey how badly I feel for the pain that I have caused you. It is not enough that I say I am sorry, but that is all I can do. From the day Sandra has died, I've had to live with the consequences of what I've done. For the rest of my life, I'm going to have to live with these feelings of responsibility for her death. Not a day, not an hour goes by that I don't think of the harm that I caused. I loved Sandra a great deal. She was a sweet, innocent little girl who did not deserve to have such a short life. I alone are responsible for Sandra's death. I would like to apologize directly to you, Maria, for all of the pain that I've caused. I should not have taken Sandra from you, and I want you to know that she did not suffer, and I did not. I would also like to apologize to Sandra's extended family. I know that I have caused you a great deal of grief, and for that I am truly sorry. I would also like to apologize to my own family for what I have put them through. I'm grateful that they have continued to stand by me, and I thank you for your unconditional love and support. I know how hard this has been for you as well, but you've continued to stand by me, and I can't tell you how much that means to me. I would also like to apologize to my own daughter, whom I've lost. I hope that someday you will forgive me. I love you a great deal, and I hope to see you again someday soon. I owe an apology to the people of Tracy and the police officers who spent so much time looking for Sandra. I know that this has touched each of you personally, and for that I'm truly sorry. I know in my heart that God God has forgiven me. And I know my family has forgiven me. And I'm asking you, Maria, for your forgiveness. I can't imagine forgiving somebody who would harm my own daughter. But I hope that someday you can forgive me. Maria, I wish I could give you an explanation for what happened. I owe you an explanation. But I still cannot understand why I did what I did. Every day I try to discover my motivation, but I still do not have an answer. This is a question I will struggle with for the rest of my life. I wish that I could do more to help you. I wish I could bring Sandra back, but I can't. I wish I could trade places with her, but I can't do that either. I know that Sandra's death will continue to cause you pain. And I hope that this apology will help you in some way by accepting responsibility for what I have done. I hope that I can give you some peace. Thank you.
Melissa also had the nerve to ask Maria for forgiveness. This woman is twisted and disgusting. I am absolutely fuming at the fact that Melissa couldn't bring herself to admit she brutally essayed Sandra. Is that too embarrassing for her? She just can't be labeled a chomo. Oh no. What is she afraid of? Prison justice, maybe? What a coward. Melissa is one of the most terrifying child predators I have researched. She was an absolute wolf in sheep's clothing, an imposter.
Thousands lined up for hours and packed an auditorium in Northern California to remember 8-year-old Sandra Cantu.
The program for the memorial service was called A Celebration of Life. Friends and family of Sandra say they're trying to focus on the joy the little girl brought to their lives rather than the tragic way she died.
There's strength in numbers, and everyone wants to talk, and everyone, feels the same way. So she's touched a lot of lives.